Hello everyone, Dr. Paul Rose here on behalf of all of the teaching team for PSY1105. In this set of slides, I'd like to talk to you about the essay, the questions that you can choose for the essay, how you go about finding literature, and how you go about completing the essay successfully. So this presentation will cover the particular questions of which you have to answer one, key examples of species and behaviours that you can consider. That will be by no means exhaustive. The structure of the essay and what you should consider writing about and how you would write about it, as well as how to find and search for literature that will be useful or helpful to you when you're completing the essay. So the essay is 2,000 words long, and within that essay you must choose from one of these three questions. Please only choose to answer one question. And the three questions are: how does social learning influence the development of behaviour in non-human primates? How do cooperative carnivorous mammals organise their hunting behaviour? And how do bird species that perform lekking behaviours organise their courtship displays? So we have a question on social learning in primates, a question on hunting organisation in carnivorous mammals, and a question on courtship displays in birds that use lekking. Please check the LE Classroom for all submission details, week, date and time of when you should submit your essay. Submission details are not provided in this presentation. Please go on the LE Classroom to check the submission date. This essay is submitted as electronic only. We do not mark a paper copy. Please submit an electronic copy only through Turnitin in the LE Classroom. Your essay must include an introduction, a main body, and a short conclusion. I will explain in more detail what goes into these key parts. Please check that you have included a minimum of at least 10 good quality references. By good quality references, I mean seminal and current journal articles from the peer-reviewed literature, maybe the odd acceptable website from a scientific organisation, and textbooks. Please see further guidelines that are published on LE that will allow you to develop and plan your essay. Those further guidelines will include the full assignment brief with full information on each section of the LE, as well as the psychology marking criteria that will explain what we look for as assessors when deciding on achieved grades for an essay. So this is what I mean by an essay including an introduction, a main body and a conclusion. There is a clearer version of this diagram available in the LE Classroom. To start with, you have a title. That has been provided to you. Simply copy the question as the title of your essay. You then need to write your essay's introduction. An introduction is a paragraph or two that explains the title and sets the scene. It should outline key terminology and key concepts with references, and it should lead the reader into your main arguments. So in your introduction, maybe explain key terminology of animal behaviour. What is lekking, for example? What is social behaviour? What is behavioural development? What types of species will you talk about? You then have a main body, which is the bulk of your essay. And this main body should cover important areas of science spread across each paragraph. So each paragraph should ideally flow into the next. You are explaining, discussing and evaluating. You are reviewing the literature around that particular topic area. You can provide explanations for key points that you find in the literature, and you can determine why the literature that you have reviewed is useful to our understanding of the main topic area. You can describe and discuss behaviours, species, ecology and evolution, so long as that description and discussion tells the reader about why the science is useful. I have an example at the end of this presentation of things that you shouldn't do in the main body of the essay. But what you should definitely do is use, discuss, explain, evaluate key examples from the literature that highlight why you are answering that title's question. Once you have done all of that, once you have brought together your source material, once you have explained and reviewed your papers, you have a conclusion, which is normally one short paragraph which brings everything together. Please do not include any new information in your conclusion. Please do not include any references. And a good conclusion asks two questions. What have you found out and why is it important? So you summarize the key finding of your essay and you tell the reader what it adds to our knowledge of the wider world and of the application of that area of science. When you plan and write your essay, remember 10 minimum sources. And I've also got some guidelines for you later on about the number of species you should consider including as examples too. So let's talk about species examples that you can include. This essay is not designed to make you become a natural historian. You do not need to worry about species identification or natural history information. But you should make sure you are choosing species that are appropriate to the question being posed by the essay. So this slide will help you identify species that you can search for in the scientific literature to find relevant papers. For those of you that are choosing the behavioural development and primate question, which is question number 1, I have given you some examples of primates. So on this picture, I'm going to go from left to right. The first species is an example of a lemur. The second species is an example of a tarsier, which is a small primitive type of primate. We then have a species of monkey, a capuchin. We then have a mandrill, a species of baboon. And then we have a gorilla, a species of ape. So lemurs, tarsiers, monkeys, baboons, and apes are all of the species of primate that you can discuss, evaluate, and describe the behaviours of and the science that is conducted on them in the behavioural development of non-human primates essay. And I should hasten to add that that title is about non-human primates, so please do not include the human being as one of your examples. Question number 2 is all about cooperative hunting in carnivorous mammals. So this is where you must review examples of species that hunt and forage in groups. Prides of lions, packs of African hunting dogs, pods of killer whales. There are many other species that commonly occur in the scientific literature too. Wolves, mongooses, hyenas. Just make sure they're a mammal, just make sure they forage and hunt in groups, and just make sure they show evidence of cooperation. And finally, the lekking behaviours and courtship displays of birds. Lekking is a particular behaviour where male individuals gather together to display as a group to females. And we can see this in particular species of birds. So again, from left to right for question number 3. Sage grouse, manakins, and ruffs, which are a type of wading bird. So the grouse, the manakin, and the ruff all perform these lekking displays where males gather together to compete to the right to breed with females. Please include a minimum of 3 example species for answering that question. A minimum of 3 example species. You can compare and contrast those species' behaviours and techniques in the main body of your essay. So that gives you an idea of different types of species you can focus on. What about the behaviours that those species are performing? So again, I'll give a couple of examples of each, going from left to right. So on the left, 2 chimpanzees. So this is an example for the behavioural development in primates. We've got chimpanzees here that are using tools. tool use, cultural evolution, teaching of youngsters, finding out of new skills. They are all examples of behavioural development that we can talk about in a social context in primates. Primates are very good at explaining, at teaching, shall we say, behaviours to one another. Youngsters learn from observation of adults, of elders, how to develop those behaviours. So tool use literature is an excellent place to start. And particularly with the likes of chimpanzees, where we see cultural evolution in particular chimp troops in particular parts of Africa, they have developed these key learnt behaviours. My next example is for question 2, cooperative hunting carnivorous mammals. Here we've got some lionesses taking down their prey. Lionesses have particular roles within that hunting pride, and those particular roles do different things. Some ambush, some select the individual to chase, some bring down the prey item. This is very similar across different carnivorous mammals that you can focus on. Individuals, based on their experience, based on their learned behaviours and based on their age, might take a different role in that foraging behaviour to gain a prey item. How are these animals foraging optimally? By dividing up the group roles for hunting within that social structure. And finally, we have the peacocks, and they are an example of a lekking bird. So how do leks evolve? What happens within a lek? Why are females choosing males at particular lek positions? What traits do males possess that within a lek females find attractive? Why has this evolved in certain species of birds? Please don't think you have to cover every species, and please don't think you have to cover every behaviour. I suggest you do a literature search for key terms within your question. You look at the types of species that are commonly focused on, and you review, i.e. explain, describe, evaluate the scientific information on why that behaviour occurs. In this next part of the presentation, I'd like you to think about the source material that you're going to be choosing, particularly the quality of source material that you use. So I said earlier, a minimum of 10 good quality references. Let's look on this slide, which is all about hunting behaviour in killer whales, what we mean by a quality reference. On the left, we have a website from National Geographic, How Orcas Work Together to Whip Up a Meal. Bit of a journalistic title, but National Geographic is a reputable scientific institution. So you could consider using information from National Geographic so long as it was used sparingly, i.e. that is your one website that you use. National Geographic will also provide details of the original source that the information came from. So it's always best to go back to that primary source and use that primary literature. In the middle, we've got a website, allthatisinteresting.com. Killer whales are hunting and mutilating great white sharks for their testicles, livers and stomachs. Even more journalistic than the National Geographic article. Not referenced, with no citations, written as popular science for the layperson. This is the type of website to avoid. They're very tempting when you think about that's a nice example or an interesting example for your essay, but we want you to review the scientific literature. I'm not saying that science journalism is bad, and I'm not saying that the people that wrote that article don't know what they're talking about. They are presenting science in a catchy way to the general public. But we don't want you to do that. We want you to write for other scientists. So please avoid these more generic websites. And instead, please focus on my last example, which is on the right. An academic paper from Oxford University Press, published in the journal Molecular Biology and Evolution. This is all about the evolution of population structure in a highly social top predator, the killer whale. I hope you can see the title of that article ticks many boxes of the things that you need to talk about in your essay. And I now have a short video that I have embedded into this presentation where I have explained how to search for such types of literature to give you some tips and pointers on how to navigate around the world of scientific publication. So you found a good quality article that you'd like to use. So let's just look at how we would access that article and how we would get the full text PDF from the range of different journal databases that are available to you. I'm going to start off just by going to Google Scholar. It's what I like to consider a cheap and dirty way of finding information, but it's actually really, really helpful. And one of the things that's quite useful about Google Scholar is it will save within your search history titles that you've looked for. So you can see these are the past searches that I have done on Google Scholar. And one of the things that I've done for this presentation is to just show you how to get information for your essay. So I have searched for killer whale hunting strategies. Google Scholar is quite useful because not only does it give you a range of different sources, it also tells you where you can find these sources. So this first paper is found in the journal database Wiley. This one's on Springer. And these ones have been uploaded by the author to ResearchGate, which is a fully open access depository for people's scientific output. So do check ResearchGate if it's a way of finding a particular article. If you're looking for brand spanking new science, and that's one of the things that you need to consider for the 1105 lecture, then you can search by the current year. So this then brings up the newest types of paper on that particular topic area. So if we're looking for new journals, i.e. those in the past 5 to 10 years, we can change our range of where we're searching for, and that might help you refine where you're finding information. But let's go back to the paper that I found that I included on the slides. So it's this one here, Evolution of Population Social Structure in a Top Predator. And that's at the database, the publisher's Oxford University Press. So I'm going to click through, and it tells me that the journal is found in the Molecular Biology and Evolution publication. Now, I can read the abstract here for free, but I can't access the PDF without signing in. The University of Exeter Library gives you the most amazing array of articles that you can access online. The basic way that you access online articles is very similar across publishers. Go to sign in. You don't have an account at the particular journal itself. You have an institutional account through your single sign-in that you get through the University of Exeter. So go down to sign in via your institution. Now, it's already remembered that I have previously signed in through Exeter. But if I hadn't, I would search for Exeter University, and this would appear there. When you click through, what it will do is take you to your single sign-in page. So what you see when you log into any university department or equipment or computer, anything like that, where you've got your username and your email address, that information would appear, and then you would click through to the journal. But I hope what you can see here, I've now got the University of Exeter has appeared in this top corner. So it's remembered my details. It's remembered that I'm at the University of Exeter, and now I can get full text access to that PDF. And I can download that PDF and save that to my downloads where I can use at another time. Once you've got that PDF, again, you should be thinking about the key findings of the paper, background information that's really useful to how you explain what you're talking about can be found in the introduction of the journal, but also go down and look at their results section and look at their discussion. How do they discuss those results? Don't just describe the natural history of the animal. Explain and evaluate what the science is telling us about these developments in our knowledge of animal behaviour. So that's one way of accessing information. One of my favourite journal databases to use is Science Direct. Science Direct is where we find journals such as Animal Behaviour, which for 1105 will be extremely useful. Again, let's sign in. I'm just going to reduce the size of the screen slightly so you should be able to see more information. Again, when I go to sign in, it's going to give me options. You can also sign in via your institution. So ignore this, go to sign in via your institution. Put in Exeter, there we are. Sign in via your institution. And again, because I've already logged in with my single sign-in to another journal site, it's remembered me. So don't clear your search history on your browser when you're looking for information, and all of these big journal databases will remember who you are. If you do this on a university computer in the library, again, this will all be automatic. But for at home, this is really useful. Let's put in some keywords of killer whale and hunting, and let's see what comes up. And here we go. We've got a range of papers that might be useful. And we've even got a preprint for 2021, which is not something that's useful for your essay, but it shows you that you can search in a more refined manner for papers that are really useful. So here we've got life history and social structure as drivers of persistent organic pollutants and stable isotopes in false killer whales. Always check the title of the paper. The false killer whale is not the animal that we are talking about. We are talking about the orca. That's why in your PSY1105 lectures, we always give you the scientific name, the binomial name of the species we're talking about. Common names can differ wherever that animal is talked about around the world. But the actual type of animal, so in this case, we're talking about Orcinus orca. There we go. We have now got papers that are particularly on killer whales, this social pack hunting cetacean. I'm just going to do one more for you so you can see how this works across different databases. You are very lucky at the university in that you have access to something that we call Web of Science, which we find through the MyMass website. So ignore this top one, go to this one. Again, Web of Science is a massive journal database that searches a whole range of depositories for peer-reviewed information. Click on Access Now. Find your institution. In this case, it's slightly different. So some journal databases will ask you under institutional sign-in to go to UK Federation. So just to repeat myself, if when you click on select institution and you find a list of big companies, just scroll down to UK Federation. And then you should see things look relatively similar. Find the University of Exeter. And again, it's remembered that I've come through the library and here I am signed in as the University of Exeter. Web of Science is really helpful because you can search every single one of its databases to access thousands and thousands of papers. And here we go. That's brought up many different papers that we can search for to look at how killer whales understand what they need to do during their hunting. So one of the things that quite commonly appears in the scientific media is this idea that killer whales will produce waves by pushing against an ice floe to wash off their prey. Here is a paper that you have full text access to about how they do that by working together in a group. A nice example that you can evaluate of how cooperative hunting allows the killer whale to catch larger prey items. That is a peer-reviewed publication, so that's the best type of information that we can use. So all of these journal databases, Science Direct, Wiley, Ingenta, JSTOR, Web of Science, you have access to all of the papers through your single sign-on through the university's e-library. Find the institution, check that it says you might need to go to UK Federation, search for the University of Exeter, and then when the University of Exeter sign-in page in, put your login and put in your password. And this world of scientific publication, that is quite exciting, this world of scientific publication will become available to you.